everybody. Welcome back to the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. I'm your host, Gene Jackson, and join me in welcoming once again my co-host this week. Of course, up first we have one half of the podcatchers himself, Josh Briley of P3 Radio. Josh, how you doing today, buddy?
Man, I'm awesome, Gene. How about you?
Man, I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I'm a little more awake than I normally am on Sunday mornings. I didn't get up any earlier, but I got the caffeine in me a little quicker than normal. So we're ready to have some fun today. And unfortunately, our usual tag team partner Richard's not able to be here. He's out of town. We won't go into why, but he's not able to be here. But hey, you know what? We do have a pinch hitter in these situations. We don't just have to go without. So this week, sitting in for Richard, it's the owner, founder, and president of STSpod.club. Spoiler alert, it's Brian Trammell. Brian Trammell, welcome back.
Tag me in. Brother Gene, Brother Josh, how the hell are you?
We're good,
What's
man.
up,
We haven't
man?
tagged you in a little bit. What's been going on?
Well, I just want to tell you right up front, I'm dying slowly on the inside. I just want everybody to know that. I hated every bit of this show that I didn't fast forward through. And no, I wouldn't buy a fucking ticket for it. I just want y'all to wait. Did I do good? I was trying to do my Richard imitation there. What do y'all think?
That's like a cross between the spoiler and it's Richard if he was doing your gimmick, right? Instead of waiting and shitting on the entire show at the end, he just starts out shitting on it where it's just like, hey, let's just cut this off right now.
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm excited. I'll just tell you in advance. No, I won't. I won't spoil my impression of this show, but I'm excited to be here. Y'all have not had me on for a long time, but apparently I'm here. I'm in negotiations to do some a lot of upcoming appearances. So,
yeah, I guess this is appropriate for BT to spoil it. But yeah, spoiler alert. Richard is gonna have a lot going on like in April. So I know we've got you here most of April, and I think there may even be once or twice in March. I don't know. I have to go back and look at the old calendar. So I put that on. I put whenever I get told by Richard or Josh or both, which has been a long time since it's been both. I don't know. Hell, we ain't had both of you gone since way back in the early days of this. But whenever they let me know, I put it on the calendar. Then I immediately message BT. I'm like, hey, we got a date for you. And he's like, yep, I'll be there. So,
well, since I don't listen to the podcast or watch the show when I'm not on it, I need you to review all the shows in between before we get started today.
Yeah. Well, why would you listen to it if you're not on it? Right?
I'm just kidding. I'm following you guys along. I love this podcast. And even though Richard's on it, I still like it. So.
Well, that's the kind of reviews we like to hear, BT. So since you have been listening, you haven't blown us off. I guess you're aware that we put out this number.
Well, blow you off people to leave us $5.
Damn. Well,
wow. Hey, I'll be texting you after.
Hey, honey. So I guess you've heard that we've been getting voicemails.
Oh yeah, I love these voicemails. Right? We got one this week.
We do.
Oh, I can't wait. Come on, throw it in there.
You know, I don't want to have a conspiracy on our hands, but we've got a leak here somewhere amongst our little crew because this person, while not revealing themselves, seemed to know that Brian Trammell was going to be here today.
Oh, so, shit.
I don't know who told him, but let's check out. Once again, this guy didn't reveal himself. I'm not going to say who it is because I can't be 100% sure, but I think the spoiler may just blurt it out when we get done. I don't know, but check it out. Let's listen to this week's voicemail from our mystery caller.
Yeah, so this past week, I was listening to y'all's Memphis Wrestling Opinion podcast, and the question was posed, who stars the Brian Christopher and Tony Adams soap opera? Who the hell do you think thought of it? Of course it was me. Hell, Eddie Marlin was still punch drunk from the wreck. And fucking Jarrett, he wasn't worried about building the wrestling house. He was worried about building houses in construction. And Lawler was too busy chasing around a cat at the softball field, if you know what I'm saying. And Brian Trammell, you know good pimple-popping piece of shit. I pray that you ride on as many airplanes as possible as humanly possible in the future.
Oh my!
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
goodness!
You know,
Wow.
that same person called in to my 5-minute time limit show. Man, this guy just hates me a lot. I don't, like I said, we don't, allegedly we think it's somebody, but we don't want to say who it is because we don't know. He's not telling his name. Man,
Well, he called your show. What area code is it from?
It's 870. It's an Arkansas area code. So he's from Arkansas. Let's just say that much.
The call's coming from inside the house there, BT.
No.
Well, whoever it was, he took offense to last week. We had a conversation because somebody had messaged me and told me that they thought the whole Mike Anthony, Brian Christopher, Miss Tony, Miss Robin thing just all happened by happenstance, that there was no one there that would have actually given a forethought to put an angle together. And so we, kind of questioned who amongst who we think are at least booking this thing it could be. And so apparently the person that called is one of those people. So if you want to get an idea of who, if you didn't hear last week's show, go back and listen to last week's show, and that'll be your clue of who that probably was. But we can't say for sure for,
allegedly
reasons. We'll just say allegedly. But it certainly sounds like him. I'll say that. If it's not, I can't imagine who it is because they sound just like him. But guys, let's head back to Saturday, September the 11th, 1993, for another fun-filled episode of USWA Championship Wrestling. Dave Brown is back this week, and he and Corey let us know what's happening today. We're going to see the King, Jerry Lawler, in action. We're going to see the fabulous one, Jeff Jarrett, in there. And we're going to see Del Rios in action. So that should be fun, right? This will be the debut of, actually, they call him Del Rios at the top of the show, but when he comes out, he's the Spellbinder at this point. So I guess they were still on the fence of what they're calling him. I don't know, but that was the notes that was in front of Corey. But I don't think we did this last week, but this seems like a good time as any, since we just mentioned the Spellbinder is going to be on this week's show. Get his action figure from rushfigures.com. Very cool. Spellbinder action figure. You can get yours today. Go to rushfigures.com and pick you one up.
Gene, so correct me if I'm wrong here. We got to see in 1993, we had the debut of PG-13 and Spellbinder, right?
That's right.
Wow. What a year, man. I mean, we've had bad shows, but just think of that.
3 guys that would mean a lot to the USWA moving forward and would be around to the very, very end of of its run. So, yeah, good point. As we return, Jerry Lawler steps up into the ring. He's got his crown. He's rocking the Unified World title. And then Dave lets him know that he's going to have to stand there in the ring with his dick in his hand because they're going to run a highlight video of the undefeated Native American Tatanka with his god-awful ring music that had that at the beginning of it.
Oh, God. That was
so obnoxious. But we find out that the Native American Tatanka, he's undefeated, and he's the next WWF superstar that Vince McMahon is sending to Memphis to try and take out the King. And now we're ready for match number 1. Jerry the King Lawler versus Lee Vincent. Guys, have we seen Lee Vincent here before? I don't think so.
I don't remember him, no.
Mm-hmm. So, anyway, have a decent little match. Lawler drops the old fist drop on him. That gets the 1, 2, 3. And then suddenly, one of the dog catchers and some random dude hit the ring who I initially just assumed, like, this must be the other dog catcher. He just forgot to bring his rent-a-cop outfit or whatever. I don't know.
That's what I thought, but it was a good impression of the Nasty Boys, right?
I thought the same thing, too.
Like, that's the only thing that I could think of watching him in the ring. I mean, he looked like he had done something somewhere. He just didn't look, like all tight-assed or anything.
What about Lawler? See, I made a note, and see if y'all noticed this. Lawler was almost working heel. He did wrestle moves. He did wrestle moves, which was weird. But then he put his foot in this guy's face and just was smashing it. It was almost heel.
It was very bizarre. Like and people were cheering, so whatever.
Well, it wasn't long ago that he was out here saying these people want to see the old king. They want to see the mean king. So I guess maybe that carried over even after the Hearts have left now. I don't know, but that's a good point. He definitely was. aggressive. This is ruthless aggression.
Yeah,
Way before
really.
Vince had thought of that. But so they attack Lawler and they hold him for what is now former referee Paul Neighbors, who comes in with a big old board. He's about to hit Lawler. Lawler kicks him in the gut, knocks the other guys loose, then breaks the board over poor Paul Neighbors' head. He's still got his neck brace on. And that lick from the board is supposedly busted him open, is what we hear later. I didn't think it was that big a shot. But anyway, so supposedly he gets a board broken over his head that busts him open. So Lawler cuts a promo saying that Neighbors has enough problems with the Moondogs without messing with him. And then he proceeds to let the cat out of the bag. Big news, guys. Paul Neighbors is going to be putting his hair on the line this week against the Moondogs' newly won USWA tag team titles. This is 100% the exact same scenario they did with the Harris twins, where 1 week one manager's hair is on the line against the belts, and the next week the other manager's hair is on the line against the belts. BT, I know me and Josh and Richard have been kind of harsh in our assessment of the babyface Moondogs recently, so please share your thoughts on not only the Moondogs and Richard Lee, but the dog catchers as well.
Y'all are going to hate me for this, but I see what y'all are saying about the Moondogs, and I really like them better as heels. And then looking at the matches that they have, this 3 minutes and something this week against the dog catchers, but I loved the dog catchers with the net. I absolutely love the net. I know y'all shit on it, but I just love the net. I think did you say, I think, Gene, you said something about it, reminded you of something on Batman. 1966 Batman is what it reminded me of. And I was marking out for it. I said, that's the way to stop the dogs. Put a net on them. Put a net on them. And then I got listening to y'all because I always watch the show, then listen to your show. Yeah. And I was like, man, these guys were shitting on that. That was one of my favorite parts of the show. But I think the funniest part about the dog catchers, and y'all have said this over and over, I don't think it's ever been the same. There might have been one guy all the time, but I know it's never been the same two people. That's the hilarious thing about it. And I'm tired. I loved Richard Lee at one point, but I'm tired of his interviews. I'm tired of babyface Moondogs. And the dog catchers, they were somebody that I actually liked the gimmick for a couple weeks. Now I'm tired of them. So yeah, just not a fan. I'm like y'all, just not a fan of this whole program. And now if you put Paul Neighbors in the middle of all this, which I guess Paul Neighbors is going to be the manager that never gets anything done. He's just a bumbling idiot kind of thing. I'd rather for him to be a manager than a referee trying to do stuff, but I'm just not a fan. Just not a fan of this.
Well, Josh, you've been a fan of Paul Neighbors' antics up to now. How do you like this managing aspect of it?
I mean, I don't think he's off on the right foot in a sense of who he's managing. You know what I mean? I mean, you could say, okay, yeah, they were literally just the tag team champions, but it's whoever can fit into the mask that week, So essentially that doesn't mean shit. And then he comes out with just some random dude. I mean, like a Nasty Boys impersonator, and we don't know who this guy is. So I feel like if they could have associated Paul with somebody established, I know there's not a lot of options in that sense, but still, if they could have gave him somebody, solid first. I don't see anything solid,
Right. Maybe that's part of the story is that I know that's not, because that's not what, I like the funny thing about Burt Prentice being a carny fuck coming out saying, hey, for $10,000, which y'all made a point, he said he was broke, but he had $10,000. You can now have the dog catchers. I thought that part of it was hilarious, because we all know from till the day he died, Burt Prentice was carny. So that's the funny part of all that to me. It sounds like a real story. So hey, for $10,000, you can have part of my promotion. So yeah.
So my theory, and I'll elaborate more on this later, but I still stick with my initial, because I went back and rewatched the match where they actually somewhat wrestled last week, and I still stick with my original assessment. I do think that guy was the other dog catcher. That's why there wasn't 2 dog catchers and that guy. I think that's the gimmick that he wrestles with on the Outlaws, and they just had him come out like that so that he could job to Jeff Jarrett later without Jarrett beating one of the dog catchers. But who's to say? I can't prove that theory, but I'm convinced that's who that is. At least he's been the dog catcher. I think he's the one, the dog catcher that wrestles in that outfit that they're currently wrestling in.
I want to call bullshit on Eugene. I really do. Because I'm like, why would they send him out with the dog catcher so you could make that assumption? And he hasn't even debuted yet. And da-da-da-da-da. And then my mind goes to PG-13. Who was gone, and they were making, so you would think, going to make a surprise debut or whatever, and then they send him out unannounced first of the show to break up a fight. So I would love to call bullshit, but I can't.
And
what
I can
about
guarantee
Rick York?
you,
Did you see anything else about Rick York?
I didn't even try to look him up.
I know Josh said, very at the very front that it didn't look like he wasn't excellent or anything, but he wasn't the total shits in the ring either. So
I'm sure he had been wrestling on some shit shows around Tennessee and Arkansas, something like that. But I didn't figure there'd be anything to find about him. I would assume, because I haven't heard of him before or since. So I seriously doubt it. But I'm sure if Richard was here right now, he could attest that, like when he was in Memphis, that if somebody would have said, "Hey, don't you think that people are going to put that together if he comes out there?" That nobody ain't going to notice that. These people don't pay attention to this. That the attitude from everybody I know that saw and worked behind the scenes for Memphis from the 80s up through the end said the overwhelming attitude was just like, I don't like pay attention to that shit. They're all marks, So that I get your theory there, Josh. But that wouldn't have been the least of their worries in this.
Yeah, that's why I'm not surprised. They just fucking do it.
So we finally get to see this week's graphic, and this is how long it's been since we had BT on the show. He hasn't been on since we started having these wonderful green screen graphics each week.
Oh, God.
But we get the graphic. This week it is End of the Trail, as we see what appears to be a really bummed out Indian sitting on a horse. I'm not sure we could even get away with this today, but then again, with the current administration, maybe we could now, currently, as of today. But anyway, let's hear from Vince McMahon. And there's a good shot from the random screenshot I got from this one. But we're not going to show a lot of clips this week for the same reason we haven't last week. There's about 3 or 4 weeks of the show here where the video quality really
I think maybe this was Rob Feinstein selling 4th generation to somebody. So
probably.
Yeah.
It gets, I think next week's show or the week after is a lot better quality. But anyway, we got to hear from Vince McMahon and see what he has to say about last week's match between Jerry Lawler and the Giant Gonzalez, who was supposed to spend a month in the territory, and he put his notice in on the second day, according to the Observer.
For those of you who don't know me, my name is Vince McMahon. I'm the voice of the World Wrestling Federation. Jerry Lawler is the king. The king of what? That's what you have to ask yourself. Jerry Lawler, you know what you're the king of. You're the king of nothing. The king of the unified title. Whoopee. Big deal. Do you know how you got to be king, Jerry Lawler? Because of tactics and antics that you used last Monday night. You're the king of the cheaters. No question. You know how to cheat better than anyone. I mean, can you imagine taking advantage of the 8-foot Giant Gonzalez, throwing fire in his face? His whole head, everything exploded. Jerry Lawler, that's what you're about. Throwing fire. That's we're talking wrestling now, and apparently wrestling has been reduced in Memphis, Tennessee, to Jerry the King Lawler cheating, trying to set another wrestler on fire. Well, you want fire? You've got it. And I'll promise you, and I'll promise the fans from the entire Memphis area, if you want to see fire, you're going to see fire this Monday night. You're going to see a young man run to the ring that is undefeated in the World Wrestling Federation. Now, can you imagine, with the lofty standards of the World Wrestling Federation, an individual actually being still undefeated after thousands of matches? That's what you have in the fiery young competitor by the name of Tatanka. He's undefeated, Jerry Lawler. He's going to come to Memphis this Monday night, Jerry Lawler. He's going to show you what fire is all about. He's going to walk into the ring undefeated. He's going to walk out of the ring undefeated. And oh, by the way, why don't you bring your fire, Jerry Lawler? Why don't you bring your fire and bring anything else you want to bring? Tatanka will put the fire out. And the smoke signals that Tatanka will leave after the fire is out is the king is no longer the king. The king has been dethroned. The king has been scalped.
Good God.
So, not my favorite McMahon promo so far, but it certainly wasn't bad. I love that he referred to the fire that Jerry Lawler threw at 8-foot Giant Gonzalez, and his whole head exploded.
His head exploded. I started to make a video of his head exploding from Lawler's fire, but I didn't have time. I was busy this week, but I just died laughing at that, to think that his head exploded. That's all I could think about.
Maybe it was his hair product, you know.
That could have been. Or was that suit he was wearing? You know, I met him one time. I met Giant Gonzalez. No shit. And my friends, no matter who I was, because of knowing, Heyman and Undertaker and everything, I never put anybody over to my friends. And so I met them at the airport. It was JYD and it was Giant Gonzalez. And I shook their hands, and I swear my hand looked like a little baby hand, a baby doll hand inside his hand. And my friend was like, "Well, what'd you think? How big was he?" I go, he wasn't that big. And I mean, he was like, "Damn, you won't even put that guy over." But he was huge. Standing in the airport was like, you could see him felt like miles away. I looked and I was like, "Well, there's a giant." And then I was like, "Well, there's JYD standing next to a giant." I know who that is. But he was real friendly, nice. I just told him I enjoyed their work, but I lied to him. But seemed to be a real nice guy. So,
can you imagine that car ride from the airport?
Yeah,
like JYD taking Giant Gonzalez through the hood, trying to score, and they're trying to be all low key, but you can't because you got to
make a stop real quick, big giant.
You're going to have to lean all the way back if you're scared now. God, how do you hide a giant when you're trying to hide your activities? You can't.
So also to acknowledge something that Richard said last week, Brian, were you more of a Giant Gonzalez guy, or were you more of an Elegante fan?
I'm sorry, he was Elegante when I met him. I was more of an Elegante fan. Y'all do know this whole story. They brought him over to be Atlanta Hawks basketball player. He was, you know how big he was. He was too clumsy to play basketball. So let's put him in the wrestling ring.
Richard Lee's direct quote last week. I was a huge Elegante fan.
I was like, dude, that's the first time I've ever heard those words.
I knew he wasn't good in the ring, but just something. I've always the big giants almost right now in WWE. I'm just a huge mark for him. It's just something about the giant guys, Andre and just I always liked. I like the Tiger Mask. I like Eddie Gilbert. I just always like the mix of their fat guys, skinny guys, and giants. I always was big into the giants, but I always wanted to see him wrestle and I thought against the Undertaker. I thought that would be the match at the time, but he was just a shit in the rings, unfortunately.
But honestly,
that was one of those times that you learned that those dream matches of the big guys weren't Giant Gonzalez and Undertaker seemed like a dream match. Then when it happened, you're like, ooh, no. And then you think like, man, the Giant versus Kevin Nash, that's going to be awesome. And besides Kevin Nash nearly killing him with that botched power bomb, it was just freaking awful, you know.
Yeah, you talking to what you're talking about, BT? Like the Giants were good, but I can't put El Gigante in the same category as Andre. Like
I
Andre,
wanted to. I really wanted to because he didn't draw no money.
He was super larger than life, like even bigger than a movie star to me. Andre was, but like Giant Gonzalez just seemed like, that's a big guy.
I love it that y'all said he wanted to quit the business. And the thing about it is, if Andre would have did that, Memphis, Louisville, Nashville, whatever, the gates would have went up crazy. They didn't go for because he wasn't believable to the casual fan. There's a difference between being believable to guys in the business plus being the casual fan believing. But everybody believed in Andre, man. You thought Andre, what he legit lost 4 or 5 times in his whole life, maybe up until his final years. But it was one of those guys that you not only did you want to see it because he was an attraction, but you wanted to see somebody beat him. I wanted to be there the night he got beat. So
I originally just saw Andre in the mid to late 80s in his limited mobility stage of his career, where he wasn't a whole lot more impressive than Giant Gonzalez, but somewhat. But man, when I got a little bit older and got a hold of some of those Coliseum videos where like he did the cage match against Killer Khan and did the freaking Ray Stevens doink splash off the top rope, I was like, God dang, this dude could actually go at one time, so he definitely has that over Giant Gonzalez. And I think the final word on Giant Gonzalez is in WCW, Flair couldn't drag a decent match out of him. And then he comes to Memphis and Lawler can't drag it. If Flair or Lawler can't get a match out of you, you're beyond hope. It's time to go find a new hobby or career path. So, and one thing I want to touch on, I don't want to get way off base because we were on pace there to get the show over with in a pretty decent amount of time. But one thing I do want to touch on, we said that about in the Observer, they said that the Giant Gonzalez was supposed to be here for a month and he turned his notice in on the second day, which is a fun story. And it may be 100% true, but we also had another story last week that showed just how much bullshit got spread in the goddamn dirt sheets whenever they put out there that the Spellbinder was debuting soon, and it was going to be Dale Wilkes, the Patriot, playing a magician.
I hate to defend Dave on this one, but that was just ever who was feeding him the information. They heard the name wrong or something, and then Dave just took it.
Yeah, but my point is, if he's just printing whatever bullshit information, well, somebody could have thought it was cute to say, yeah, he quit the second day, and then he just prints that. So
that's true.
I'm not saying Dave's lying. I'm saying Dave just printed whatever the fuck anybody told him. So
that's what he did. Unfortunately, that is what the Observer was. Like I said, the thing was he would talk to his sources. They would tell their opinion. He would put it in there, and occasionally you would see him say, I got a chance to see, for instance, I got a chance to see Gonzalez against Lawler. Or I got a chance to see blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I learned real quick when he was calling me every week for the Memphis stuff, when Memphis was so hot that's the way Observer is. And you go back, not only that, but there's a lot of stuff that's like that, that the Eric Bischoffs and Jarrett and all those guys have pulled in some of those. And the bad thing about Dave is, although he probably corrected this about who Spellbinder was, a lot of stuff he never goes back and corrects, which is the sign of a good journalism, to correct your mistakes. So he doesn't do that.
Got to print a contraction, if you will.
Oh, yeah. By the way, I talked to Downtown Bruno about Giant Gonzalez. I'm just going to do this real quick on episode 759, and he talks about his bathroom, how he went to the bathroom. So if you want, I asked the weird questions on mine.
Not only the spoiler BT, but he's the teaser BT as well.
That's right. Teaser today.
So up next, we've got match number 2, the Spellbinder taking on Leon Downs. And guys, knowing what I know now, and realizing that this was probably Dale's second or third match in his life, armed with that knowledge, this is actually a pretty good match because we know that Leon Downs is very new too. And so going into this, knowing like, man, I didn't realize, in the early days when I saw him in USWA that he just started. So I watched this match with a whole different critical eye, and it's actually good. So I got us a few highlights here to check out. Since this is our debut, like we talked about earlier, a guy that's going to be around for a long time here in USWA. Let's check this out.
Well, here's the word from Vince McMahon. Standing in the ring right now is Leon Downs. I tell you what, we've seen Leon several times before. He steps into... What is this? The Spellbinder has arrived. Speaking of fire, I saw some there. Removing a mask, and he still has a mask. Yeah. Boy, what an interesting... Oh, what? The Spellbinder. He kind of had me spellbound there for a minute.
Yeah, me too.
He climbs into the ring.
In with Leon Downs. Oh, Downs goes to swing at him, and the big Spellbinder just shoves him down. Picks up Leon Downs, drops him down. Body slam on Downs. Nice arm drag, and drags him up. Reversal. The Spellbinder whips him in. Boy, what a move. Takes Downs again into the turnbuckle. Comes off, and he...
Binder continues to work with a big forearm across the back.
Spellbinder sets Leon Downs up. Oh, boy. Gets him now with that DDT. Covers him, hooks the leg, too, and that'll do it for Leon Downs. The Spellbinder gets the win over Leon Downs. And a lot of impressive things in there with the Spellbinder, huh? Absolutely.
So again, being one of his first couple of matches ever, really wasn't much to find wrong with that match. I forgot about him ever using the double arm DDT. That looked pretty rough for poor Leon. But other than that, I thought it was a good match.
Man, I had nothing, there was nothing wrong with that match for me. I made a note that I was just, Dave Brown seemed to be so excited about those magic tricks. I was wanting Dale to go over to him and pull a quarter out of his ear, I mean,
Dave with his shit if he'd have did that, I believe.
Man, I mean, he was fired up about the match. And as a kid, I was huge into magic, but I just didn't have any talent on anything. So there you go. I couldn't be a magic guy. Is that what I'm trying to say? A magician, yeah. But yeah, I wanted to see that because Dave would have had orgasm. Oh, yes. Quarter out of my ear.
Well, you can do that 100 more times. We'll be somewhere, Dale.
But no, Dale's a cool guy. I've got to interview him on my other podcast, and he's got such an interesting story.
He was swole too, wasn't he? Jeez, He was big at this time. Yeah.
And I know Josh and Richards interviewed him on his show. Have you had him on yours yet, BT?
No, I never have. I've met Dale a couple of times, but nothing where we talked backstage or anything.
Yeah, if you get a chance, go check out those interviews. They're, like I say, he's got such an interesting story. He's a really good guy. And, he comes in and he's probably in the best shape of anybody we've seen in the USWA since we've been watching it this year. Him and Brian become good friends. And if you kind of follow along as we're watching these, as we go along through 93 and then into 94, you can kind of see Brian's physique continues to improve as he's hanging out, going to the gym with the Spellbinder. And
it's weird how a lot of people that hung out with Dale's physique got better. Weird.
Yeah.
That's really weird. Magic. It was magic, y'all. It was magic.
I don't know, man. That Dale, for a long time, he worked literally at the gym right down the street from my house.
Yep.
And Richard, the real Richard Lee, that's the co-host of the show, he will attest. Like, Dale was awesome at giving him tips. Like, he's the one that laid it. Richard was just in a pit of despair. He wanted to quit his diet. He was really, really struggling, and Dale gave him the answer, and within a day he was back on track, feeling great again. I mean, Dale's like a fucking professor at fitness.
And that's
I've
the
heard
true
that
magic.
too, yeah.
That's the truth, not the cards and the webs and all that. That's, if he can turn around your mindset on fitness in a day, that's the closest thing I would get to a magic trick.
He is also one of those guys in the business that I've never heard anyone say anything bad about. There's only a handful of those guys, but I have never heard anyone say, "Oh, he stiffed me for this," or "He's a piece of shit," or blah blah. Not a bad word about Spellbinder.
We'll end up having him on again, but in that lost episode of Dangerous Conversations where we had him on with Doug and Tommy, that's one thing that Doug and Tommy both, went on about was what a great attitude he came in with, and that a lot of times a guy like him, he's the original, what do you call it?
Developmental guy.
Developmental guy. So he was getting a check from Vince every week, whether he worked towns or no matter what the house drew or whatever. So a lot of those guys, especially like later, like in the Power Pro days where we had all these guys come in with contracts, a lot of the local guys would tell you like, man, these guys just didn't give a shit. They just show up and they thought they were a star and, they were just there to draw their check. But Tommy and Doug both said, that Dale always had a good attitude. He was always wanting to learn. He didn't act like he was better than anybody or being in Memphis was beneath him. And that went a long way with a lot of people. So a lot of people, wanted to help him. So just an all-around good guy. So it's cool that he's here now and we'll be able to follow his progression. Of course, Spellbinder doesn't stick around long. Then we'll talk about that at length when we get there about Lawler's decision to pull the gimmick off of him for a little while since he was very green. So, but we'll save that discussion for another day because next up, Brian Christopher comes out. He's got Miss Simpson and Miss Simpson's maid, Miss Robin, with him. And Dave Brown wasn't here last week, but he lets Brian know he heard all about what went on with the Phantom of the Opera and the pictures. And it seems Dave's feeling pretty feisty today. And Brian is doing his best to shut him down. But boy, he's mugging like.
And he saw that. He acts like he got excited about seeing the pictures. He's more excited about those pictures than he was about Spellbinder's magic, I think,
Yeah, but if you're watching the video cast right now, here's some of Dave's faces he's making while Brian's cutting his promo here. I wish they were clearer, but you get the point.
and Brian came out super fired up, super aggressive. And I swear, we've talked about it on the show in weeks past, but I think there is some like personal vendetta outside of the station with Dave and Brian Christopher. Like there is too much hostility there. And it's like the office type hostility, you know what I mean? Where it's like, I'm going to talk to you, but I'm going to be so nasty to you. And I'm, it's like constant pushing of the lines. And Brian just keeps digging and digging and digging, where at points it's like, damn, I'm just a slight bit uncomfortable with, like for Dave, because I feel like it's real, it's so intense,
The day that line was crossed for me where I totally felt 100% like you do, Josh, is when Brian come out and called Dave Brown, the weather clown. And Dave goes, yeah, just come out here and rip off old Jimmy Hart lines. It's like, oh, God.
No, y'all don't know the real story. So Brian almost made them lose their contract in Channel 5. He clogged up the bathroom. There is a story about this, and I don't know if it has anything to do with Dave, but he did clog up the bathroom and made a big mess and try to blame it on somebody else or something. There's a huge backstage story about he almost cost him the Channel 5 contract because of the bathroom being messed up.
Wow. Heat with Dave over a clogged toilet.
That's
the
probably
kind of inside info you get with Brian here.
Yeah, it's probably that bathroom that Tommy Rich put that picture down. That started all that right there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll get there. I'll tell you, I talked to Tommy about that the other night, and if you listen to that interview, the Southeastern one, you'll hear it, but we'll talk about it here.
Awesome.
So Brian wants us to believe that Chris Adams was the guy in the Phantom of the Opera outfit last week. That's bullshit. I mean, even if his character does get revealed to be Chris Adams, I can guarantee you that was not Chris Adams.
Did y'all think that was Chris Adams at any time last week? Because I did.
Absolutely not.
No.
Oh, no. Okay.
Absolutely not. But anyway, as Brian's talking, the pictures start popping up on the screen again, and Dave's reacting, and Brian's trying to, I think that's the one thing is if you try to explain this on here and people are just listening, this whole angle sounds kind of convoluted and silly, but to Josh's point earlier, the way Brian plays it, the intensity he comes out with each week is what sells it.
Mhm.
And
I
so
agree 100%.
Brian is trying to cover Tony's eyes. He doesn't want her to see the pictures. And finally, she ends up seeing a picture of Brian kissing Miss Robin. And things escalate pretty quickly. As JR would say, business picks up. And yes, all hell breaks loose. We have a cat fight. There's hair pulling, the whole 9 yards. There's a shot that went leading to one of the ones that started the fight. And there's Lawler, and Jeff Jarrett was quick to break it up. There's a shot of when the fight's going on there. It was fun. So this escalated pretty quickly. We just brought Miss Robin out 2 weeks ago, and now Tony has slapped Brian, and these two are at each other's throats, and we've got a full scale war here within just a couple of weeks. They're showing up.
And did you notice, like, immediately when Lawler and Jarrett came out to make the save? I think it was Corey, or it was either Corey or Dave, but they immediately say, yeah, Lawler and Jarrett out here to save Tony Adams. It's like when that slap, that was the switch. She went from Miss Simpson to Tony Adams full time.
I don't slapped Miss Simpson right out of Brian.
She laid hands on him. She transferred the demon back into Brian Christopher.
I find it funny that, when Jeff's being attacked, it takes Jerry a long time to get there. When Jerry's getting attacked, sometimes Jeff takes a long time to get there. But both of them are out there pretty quick to pull Miss Adams off of Miss Robin. So
it's amazing. It's amazing.
So let's take our first podcast commercial break, and then we'll be right back with this week's segment with Tommy Wildfire Rich.
Hey guys, Ray Russell here, curator of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, inviting you guys to listen to many of the programs here as part of the WrestleCopia brand, including, but not limited to, the Wrestling Memory Grenade, currently covering the 1988 and the WWF project. You can also listen to the Regional Wrestling Podcast, where we talk the territories. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop. But that's not all. You can also check out the Puro Wrestling Academy with the professor of Puro Resu, Mr. Dan Ginnity. Dan and I go back in time and cover the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and more, all part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, located over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, and anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. So if you're looking to support that next up-and-coming podcast brand, please consider making it WrestleCopia.
This is Wrestling Nostalgia, the podcast that dives into wrestling history. Hey, wrestling fans, I'm Dave Dynasty, and if you enjoy podcasts that are knowledgeable and history-driven, then Wrestling Nostalgia is for you. With great guests and fun interviews, there are over 200 episodes in our archives. We chat with several first-time guests and often cover topics not discussed on other podcasts. Look up Wrestling Nostalgia on your favorite podcast platform and visit all of our links at linktree/WrestlePod. That is linktr.ee/RASSLEPOD. And remember, wherever you go, whatever you do, be good, be safe, and keep on growing.
The Spellbinder comes into the studio with his hands on fire, and he's a great magician. I come in the house from grilling outside with my hands on fire, and I'm a shitty cook. It doesn't hardly seem fair, but
and nobody
whatever,
was
man.
Concerned about fire code and such. Like Dave usually is a stickler for stuff like that. I got a little fire now, or nothing. They were like, "Wow, look at that!
Oh, cool!" Yeah, exactly. But Eddie Gilbert would go light somebody's face on fire, and it was a big problem for everybody, But, so next up, we get a promo from the King. And oh my gosh, this one would be an HR nightmare these days. He's making comments about playing Cowboys and Indians and never wants to see remember the Indians winning, Dave. he's saying stuff about firewater, and he caps it off with his impression of the Tatanka war cry from his theme song. Again, pretty good promo from Lawler, but definitely one that wouldn't fly in today's PC society. Do you think?
Absolutely not. But there was a good amount. Talking about fire, there was a good amount of fire from what Lawler was saying, and he did a good job building this cold ass feud. That
who's going to boo
together.
Tatanka? That's what the first thing I said was, who's going to? Why would you boo Tatanka? He's a huge baby face. I'm like, boy, they are really. Y'all talk about this, but they're, Lawler in WWE, Lawler here, total different. I know it's a bizarro world going on over there at WWE, but when they brought out Tatanka, we want to boo the Indian, and it made no sense. Lawler said something about Indians do not win, well, except Cleveland, which is his favorite baseball team.
Yeah, he had to put over Cleveland, and
we said Firewater, and I just put. I mean, in my notes, I put, "Oh my!" when he did the sound at the very end of the interview.
He nailed it though. He sounded just like Tatanka's theme song. Like, did they get Lawler to do that for that? For that theme music?
Jimmy Hart and Jim Johnston are in the back.
There
Who
you
can
go.
we get to do this? And like,
Lawler, come here, baby, do it.
Baby. I know a person.
You wouldn't think he'd do it, but he'll do it. Yeah. So, that's a good point. That most of the time you're not going to boo the Indian Tatanka, but our patron, one of our patrons, Ralph, sent a thing to me here whenever Giant Gonzalez showed back up, and he's like, man, and just another example of how backwards everything is. He's like, around this same time, or not long afterwards, Giant Gonzalez turns babyface in WWF before disappearing, and then he turns heel at the same time in Memphis. So he's opposite wherever he's at. He's doing the opposite thing. So
bizarro world, it's crazy.
Now I'm going to be interested to hear Brian's take on this, because we started out okay with some of this. We've liked it a little less each week, but I know BT is the ultimate Jeff Jarrett fan. So it's now time for our That's Fabulous segment of the week. As the fabulous one, Jeff Jarrett, is hanging out with Mark Miller of the country band Sawyer Brown. And I actually was a fan of their music back in this era. I went to a couple of their concerts in Tupelo, and they were good. But, of course, Jarrett hits him with a That's Fabulous at the end. They pretty much run through half the freaking Sawyer Brown catalog in this video.
Well, at least the greatest hits. We got the greatest hits going on here.
Yeah, my YouTube video got dinged like 4 times from this one freaking video because all these damn Sawyer Brown songs. But it didn't pull them. It didn't make me take them out. But it did, say that copyrighted music had been found. I'll start with you, BT, since you're the big Jeff Jarrett fan and you hadn't been able to give your comment. Because me and Josh and Richard were kind of amused with him for first few weeks, and then by these last couple of weeks, it's like, all right, enough with this shit. Just say That's Fabulous and move on. Let's not turn it into a 6-minute segment.
Well, I'm kind of on your side, but now y'all know I'm a big Jeff Jarrett fan, but this is just I didn't fast forward it this week because I was watching the show with you guys, but it has become one of those things where as soon as you want to see who he's with and what it's about, but then you can watch it on, fast forward so you can watch someone throwing the ball to the wide receiver and all that. I at first, and I'm not sure how all of this makes him fabulous. For some reason, him being with someone out of the business, that's what it is. It's people and other successful people, him being around other successful people makes him fabulous. And man, those two guys sitting on the couch together, man, reminded me of Jackie Fargo and Jeff Jarrett sitting there. I thought Sunspeaks would go on as much as they kept talking about how much they loved each other and everything. But yeah, I mean, I had a Sawyer Brown, was it a cassette or probably a cassette?
Probably,
Sawyer Brown
yeah.
cassette. I think I saw Sawyer Brown with somebody. They opened. But yeah, what got me was that dancing he was doing. I don't remember that video, but man, that was hilarious to me. I was waiting for Jeff to jump up and dance. But yeah, I got to be on y'all's side of this. I'm done with him being fabulous. I mean, go ahead and do the gimmick, but let's get away from all these interviews.
Yeah, I mean, I think in their head, I think Jarrett thinks that, like you said, linking him to people outside the business is going to make him a bigger deal. But to me, I mean, I've been calling them the "That's Fabulous" segment each week, but really, it's the "Look Who My Daddy Knows" segment each week is what it really amounts to.
Well, I think it's not that he's associating or connecting himself to those people that make him fabulous. It's the fact that he can do their said profession, whatever it might be, just as good, if not better than them. And that it's like a redneck Mr. Perfect is the vibe I'm getting.
I got Mr. Perfect vibe from all of this. Is what I got. It's like they stole it from Mr. Perfect. So,
well, I think Kurt Hennig could have done this a lot better. But anyway, as per the usual, we follow up our "That's Fabulous" segment with a match. So match number 3 is the fabulous one, Jeff Jarrett against. We find out now that is Rick York, the alleged theoretical dog catcher without his dog catcher outfit. And he's in here taking on Jeff Jarrett. But as you can size him up in the ring, you start to see he's pretty close to the same size as that other dog catcher. So I don't know. But Jeff Jarrett gets a win with a sunset flip instead of a drop kick this week. That's something else I want to ask you too, Brian. Do you subscribe to our theory that somebody finally convinced Jeff that his leaping DDT looked like such dog shit?
I don't know,
he
but
finally started finishing the match with a drop kick.
Yeah, I'm waiting to get done with the Eddie Gilbert podcast that he did. I still haven't finished it. And along with it, I'm going to talk about 1993, but I was going to ask him about what happened to his DDT finisher. Maybe he'll let me know.
Yeah, I hope he's honest about it, because it's got to be, because somebody's like, God damn, dude, that drop, I mean, that DDT is terrible. And then, like Josh had said last week, like, all right, then I'll just finish it with a drop kick. See how you like that shit. And then this week he gives it with a sunset flip.
And Spellbinder then it does one that looks better than anyone's ever done. I mean, hell, that's as good as the Jake Roberts one back in the day. So,
yeah, once Spellbinder crushed Leon Down's skull, there was no more DDTs after that, I'm sure. So we get to the sunset flip win, and then we run back the thing from earlier verbatim, except instead of a board, he's got a trash can. But the dog catcher comes in, they hold Jeff. Here comes not referee Paul Neighbors with the trash can. Jeff kicks him in the gut, warps him with that freaking trash can again, cleans house. And yeah, like you said, Brian, he is just the inept assistant to Burt Prentice.
Yeah, he's going to be the bubbling idiot. You know, Burt's going to come back and say, what the hell is going on? I can't do Burt, so. Invitation. Well, I could have done Burt, but he's dead now. So
he won't fight you now.
I'm convinced you did, and that's how you got in this book. But anyway,
that's possible. Did I tell y'all I'm in his book? Did I tell y'all that?
Not this episode. So I'm glad.
Okay, but I am in his book.
I was afraid, since Burt wasn't on the show this week, that we wouldn't hear that Brian is actually in Burt Prentice's book. Tonight by Scott Teal, available at crowbarpress.com.
I fact checked it too. He is in the linear notes. Like
I am. In the index. My name's in the index. You can find it real quick.
And for $20, BT will sign that book for you at conventions if you see him there. So be on the lookout. So we take a break and we come back. Eddie Marlin comes out and says they are adding a match. Since everybody likes seeing these two women fight out here, and boy, I sure did. We're adding a match between Tony Adams and Miss Robin to the card this week. So I always like when Eddie comes out there and they convince us that they're just shoehorning a match into the card that wasn't previously based on.
And the pictures are always, the graphics are already made and all that. We know back in the day, now we could do that right now, but back in the day, that graphic had to be made before the show started.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So then we go and see a clip of the Moondogs regaining the tag team titles. After a mishap with the dog catchers hitting each other, one hit the other with the Moondog's bone. Moondogs get the win. And then we are treated to our weekly Richard Lee promo.
Let me say, G, 3 minutes and 31 seconds. I just want you to know that tag team title match, 3 minutes and 31 seconds. And I got a question as you're talking about Richard Lee. Where the fuck is the other title? He only had one title, didn't he?
I didn't notice. I zone out during these fucking Richard Lee promos these days. And I know there's people that listen to the show that love Richard Lee and they love the Moondogs, and they're probably starting to secretly hate us, and they may even stop listening to the show. I just can't even pretend to give a fuck about this right now. I don't know. I just can't.
Hey, I've built it up in my head like that. There's some kind of bullshit that happened with Larry Latham and Richard Lee, and that's why Richard Lee's like doing the Moondog thing without him.
Story.
Like I've totally built that up in my head because no one can find out, and like I feel like Richard Lee and the others double crossed him or something, and that's why he's so adamant about like stating which Moondogs he has right now. And, oh, by the way, they are the tag team champions and blah, 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 like I feel like something happened.
They saved my hair, brother. Unlike when Spot got pinned, I had to get my head shaved twice. Well, he did call it in the show and tell us it was all over the damn pizza deal, so we got our explanation there. So then we see what happened last week when Tommy Rich showed up to assault Jeff Jarrett. We thought he wasn't here. They played a pre-recorded promo from Tommy Rich's bathroom where he flushed a picture of Jeff Jarrett down the commode. So we assume, all right, well, Tommy's not here. He's sending a video, and Jeff's out there talking shit. Tommy shows up, attacks him, punches him in the ribs multiple times before they have to be pulled apart. Now, people who have listened to the Dangerous Conversations recent episode have already heard this, but I asked Tommy about this on the show, and I explained our theory that Tommy wasn't really in his own bathroom, that he was probably just in the bathroom there in the studio, and we based that on the fact that he was wearing the same suit in the bathroom and in the studio. And Tommy said, no, that really was my bathroom. I just only owned one suit at the time. I don't know if that's true, but that was a hilarious answer. So I'm going to assume that that's the truth. So right now, Tommy Rich is here this week in the studio, and he's going to cut a promo with Dave Brown.
Well, no videotaped interview today. If you want to say something on this television show, you have to show up. And here is Tommy Wildfire Rich.
Golly, I see you got a house load of rednecks out here today, don't you? Hey, rednecks! How y'all doing? Dave, it's a pleasure to be here. I'd just like to say, I'm going to tell y'all a little history about the Jarrett family. Back years ago, before I started professional wrestling, Jarrett, he was a man that had money. His son went to the private schools. I mean, he was catered to. Little silver spoon. Well, I worked for Jarrett. I worked on his farm, and I did odd jobs. What I did, Jeff Jarrett, I did your jobs, boy. I did your jobs so your daddy, he paid me money so you could sit on your tail. You went to the private schools. Well, the Wildfire didn't. If I've wrestled the Briscoes, I've wrestled Harley Race, I've wrestled some of the best in the wrestling business today, brother. And let me tell you something, Jeff Jarrett. I said last week that it was your daddy that you was going to have to take up for him. Well, now then, I'm saying you're not man enough to come on to me. Because what I'm saying is, if it hadn't have been for all of your cronies and all these rednecks that's sitting out here, I would have had the USWA heavyweight title. What it come down to, Jeff, shut up! Shut up! I'm not jealous of nothing. If these idiots would shut up, I could say.
They have a right to their opinion.
Shut up so I can say what I got to say. Bottom line, Jeff Jarrett, if it hadn't been not for daddy, but for you stinking old granddaddy, I'd have had that USWA heavyweight title now, right now, I'd have it. Jeff Jarrett,
Jeff Jarrett, all of a sudden, jumped on Tommy Rich. He had heard enough about Rich running down the family. And it wasn't the first time Rich had been out talking about that. They've got them apart. Let's take a break right here, and we'll be back in just a moment.
quick question. Why would they show the green screen there? That makes no sense to me.
I thought that was fun. That's why I left it into the clip, just so you can see what the fans are actually seeing in the studio. And I love that now that they have that green screen, the camera won't follow them. It's going to stay stationary in that one spot. So, like, Tommy worked Dave out of the frame, and they won't follow. No, if they were over in front of the desk, they just turned the camera. But now they just kept working their way out of frame, and they stayed centered on the logo there. And so they're just having a hell of a time keeping people in the frame on these things now that damn green screen's involved. I thought that was and I'm not just saying this because he's my podcast tag team partner now, but I thought that was a great promo from Tommy.
Loved it. Absolutely.
I worked on your daddy's farm, so you could sit up on your tail. And if you look up sheep heat in the dictionary, it would be Tommy Rich calling fans rednecks is like perfect.
I love it. I absolutely love this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, 50% of that
off camera.
50% of that fan base is not. It's not even genetically possible.
Exactly. You know? But yeah, Jeff just comes flying in out of nowhere, and we get the brawl. And I just randomly noticed this time watching it, not when I was watching it, clipping it, that as they were doing a pull apart, there was somebody in a Nightmares mask out there, but wasn't built at all like Danny or Ken. So it was just some random dude wearing a Nightmare mask with a star on the eye.
Oh, wow. I didn't see that.
So I don't know who the hell that was. There's no telling who it was. But yeah, good stuff. We haven't heard the end of those two yet, so we'll save anything else we got to say for the next round, which is coming up pretty quick. But we're going to hear from Paul Neighbors, who yells about getting hit in the head earlier and about putting his beloved ponytail on the line this week against the Moondogs. I didn't pull a clip of this, but Josh, I know, like I said, I know that Paul Neighbors is kind of I guess, what would you call it? A
guilty pleasure.
There it is. That's what I was looking for.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love that he's trying to be the most obnoxious that he can. Now that he's not going to be a ref, he's wearing just a shirt that only an asshole would wear. You know what I mean? It looks like he's trying to draw heat from that, just looking
it's
that
like
way.
A sleazy car salesman.
Yes, he has that vibe. The ponytail. How many movie villains had that exact same haircut? You know what I mean? Trying to blow up.
I didn't notice that, but you are so right about the shirt, the look, everything. Yeah,
and he's perfect for that. But it's like I said before, I don't like who they're pairing him with. I think it's a setup for failure. He's gonna do anything he can to get the best out of it, and anytime he's on camera, it's a pleasure. But at the same time, it just who he's representing, it just doesn't make me be fully invested into it now.
I'm going to say something that's probably going to cause Paul Neighbors to be the one to call our show next week and correct me in the voicemail. But I think you're giving Paul Neighbors way too much credit. I'm going to be what the guy was that emailed me about that. I think you're giving Paul Neighbors too much credit. I don't think Paul Neighbors went to a store and said, I need a fine shirt to make me like an asshole. He just went to his closet and pulled out a fucking shirt that he usually wears on Tuesday.
Right.
And that's what he wore. It wasn't
that's his fancy. That's his dress up shirt, y'all. That's
exactly. That's what this dude wears. This is
I'm wearing my church shirt.
It wasn't for heat necessarily. This is what this dude rocks on his daily life.
Well, yeah, like we all have that guy at work. We see that guy in the store. It's just he brings it naturally. He don't have to do much.
Got that cologne on, got that aqua velva going on.
Always
karate.
Always overly friendly to the lady.
Yeah, how you doing? How's everybody doing? Yeah.
How you doing, sweet thing? You got them pancakes mixed up good now.
That was Tommy Rich a little bit there coming out.
That's Tommy Neighbors or Paul Rich, whatever you want to call it. But
they're from the same area. So.
Even being 93, I'm sure Paul Neighbors was wearing that neck brace everywhere he went, no matter what. I'm sure he was selling that neck. So kudos to him for that. But so from there, we get highlights of last week's USWA title match between Jarrett and Rich. And both guys end up hitting the referee. We get a disqualification. We end up seeing Jeff punch Frank Morrell, which was kind of shocking. You didn't expect him to see him punch old Frank, but Anyway, we end up in a big old pull apart, which everybody knows I'm not a fan of those. But eventually, Tommy breaks away, gets a hold of the ring bell, and is about to come off the second rope and murder Jeff Jarrett. Eddie Marlin stops him, which is why I guess he made that comment about
Doesn't he hit him in his stomach first with it, though?
He does, but I'm saying the shot from the second turnbuckle with that heavy-ass bell would have been the end of Jeff Jarrett. I mean,
and that was that was 20 minutes and 22 seconds, so it was a solid match. And I thought Rich even it was kind of awkward, but he did that flare bump from the top rope. Jarrett grabbed him and threw him, and he ended up landing on his side. But that match looked good, guys. I would have loved to have been there for that match.
Yeah, in the clips, man, they were moving and grooving. I mean, there was arm drags and there was some real fast-paced stuff, you know.
And you didn't mention this, but Jarrett came out before Neighbors and said, and Dave tells him, "We got him out of here. He's gone." And Jeff says, just a blooper, he goes, come on back here. Wait, Dave just said he's gone. They got him completely out of here. And Jeff's trying to get him to come out. So there was some kind of miscommunications going on there. So,
yeah, I forgot to make a note of that.
I love this stuff, though. I love Rich and Jarrett. Mid-South Coliseum clips. I don't know. I just love it.
I was really happy to see Tommy Rich show up when he did, because there wasn't a lot to love on these shows at the time. So I knew, like, all right, well, Tommy's here. This is going to get fun. So, and it has. So, but Tommy ends up out there again. We end up with a pull apart. We get a challenge at the end of the show. Tommy gets up in the ring like, come on out here. And then Jeff comes out and Tommy jumps out of the ring and leaves in classic heel fashion. And that's how we wrap up the show for this week. So let's take a real quick final commercial break, and then we'll see the card for this Monday night.
Hey, it's Bob Smith, and guess what? The Outdated Wrestling Hour is now part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. But hey, no fear, you're still going to hear the unique guests, comedy, music, authors, journalists, funny people. Who knows who's going to end up on the Outdated Wrestling Hour? Remember, it's all new and all old. So check it out in the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts. Listen, if you know what's good for you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Give Me Back My Pro Wrestling, the podcast that's based on the old school but can still help you find the good stuff from today. Jimmy Street and the Plastic Chic, Jarrett, are the undisputed tag team champions of the wrestling podcast world. From thought-provoking topics to superstar interviews to action figure expertise. This team does it all, and all they ask is, give me back my pro wrestling! Every other Thursday, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey guys, this is Wolfie D from PG-13. Check out my podcast, Live and in Color with Wolfie D, every Monday at noon. We're talking Memphis, we're talking ECW, WCW, WWF, everywhere that I've been. We even have some great guests, some Hall of Famers on the show with us. Every Monday at noon, Live and in Color with Wolfie D.
All right, guys, let's see what all this fuss today has been about and hear the card for this Monday night at the Mid-South Coliseum.
Match Monday night, Mid-South Coliseum. Remember, there is an added match. We'll tell you about that in a moment, too. Jeff Gaylord will be going against Wolfie D in the opener. Colin Scott, I think most of you wrestling fans are aware of, former rugby player in Australia, former NFL football player. He will be going against Principal C.W. Bergstrom in a single match. The Spellbinder. We had our first look at him today. Interesting look at him, too. Came in here with some illusions, and was no illusion, though, that he got his hand raised. He won his match here today.
Yeah, that's true, but the Spellbinder, he's got a lot of things that he pulls up, but he better look out as well for that hubcap that J.C. Ice carries around his neck.
Yet another single match in which Brian Christopher will be going against Mike Anthony. Take then the Moondogs with Richard Lee. Yep, they're the USWA Tag Team Champions, and they're going to be bringing the belts to put them on the line. The Dog Catchers are going to be bringing Paul Neighbors, and Paul says that ponytail is going to be right there when that night is over, and the Dog Catchers are going to be the USWA champions. There's that added match we told you about. Tony Adams and Miss Robin.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, well, Brian Christopher, USWA heavyweight title will be at stake. As Jeff Jarrett, the fabulous one, has it on the line against Wildfire Tommy Rich. Then it's the end of the trio match. Tatanka, Native American, from the WWF, undefeated Tatanka, will be coming in to go against the King, Jerry Lawler.
All right. Well, there you have the card. So, guys, it's time to find out how you felt about it. What was your least favorite part of today's episode?
So, I have been liking the last few weeks, obviously, and I didn't have a lot to really complain about. But, we talk about like how much thought really goes into this stuff and speculated who thinks of what and everything like that. But I swear to God, these motherfuckers could have done a better job at two particular things. So, like we talked about, Lawler comes out first, and Neighbors comes with his two guys, and Lawler busts both of them together, then hits Neighbors with the weapon that Paul Neighbors brought out. Very next fucking match, Jeff Jarrett does a mirrored version of the same thing, only this time he had a trash can. Now, you talk whoever in the back, they don't notice stuff like that. But come on, seriously, like there had to be another way to do that besides mirroring the same attack scenario 2 times in a row. Like they don't do it in movies, and you shouldn't fucking do it on a television show. Like do something different. Like, I don't give a fuck if he brought a golf bag out and attacked him with it. Just do it in a different way where it doesn't look like you just wrote the same shit down and gave it to the 2 different people.
I feel like you could lay those 2 clips over each other and play them at the same time, and they would completely overlap perfectly with just Jarrett and Lawler's place and then a different weapon. But they timed out the same. Everything about it was identical.
I want to give them benefit of the doubt and say it was designed like that. I want to say that, but y'all are probably right about they just said, just do exactly what you just did, but do it with a trash can. Because he comes off as a total bubbling idiot for when Bert comes back. In my mind, Bert's going to come back and, trash him. So, but like we've talked about, I don't know if they really think that ahead of time when it comes to storylines. So we'll see. And
then again, Bert might not, Bert may not show back up for 3 months. Who knows?
That's right.
I mean, you know how that goes. But I remember, like when I first started wrestling, the guy that trained me, Sammy Hall, I was working shows for him, and there was a town that we did monthly shows in that we were drawing like 300 or 400 people there, which was a good crowd at the time. And I had just started out. I'd only been wrestling about 2 months, and I had been a heel there every show. Well, they were short of babyface. And he's like, all right, well, you're going to work babyface tonight. I'm like, I can't do that. And he's like, why? I'm like, because I've been a heel here the last 2 months. Like, nobody pays attention to that. I'm like, Sammy, I was sitting in those seats 2 months ago, and I promise you, when you did dumb shit like this, I noticed it, and it drove me crazy. I would drive home pondering that and wondering why. What are you thinking? I was like, people pay attention more than you think. And I persuaded him to have me work heel, and they figured something else out about the babyface. But people pay a lot more attention than they gave people credit for, I promise you. So I don't know, man. But I know that was the mentality because I witnessed it firsthand. So did you? So is that what that was your least favorite part too, Brian?
Yeah, I'd say the whole Paul Neighbors, Boondogs, all that going on. I can't get into it. I just can't get into it at all. If I knew this was the end of the storyline, it had something to do with Paul Neighbors, they're feuding against Bert, I might think that it might be funny to see it happen. But I'm already tired of the Moondogs and dog catchers. So putting Paul Neighbors in, who I'm not a fan of. I hate referees that do heel stuff, and I hate battle royals. So that's 2 of my hates right there. So.
And Memphis is the kind of place that could do a heel referee battle royal.
Battle royal, yep.
I really hate it that way. It's going to be a spoiler that way. You're like, we know what Brian's going to hate. That heel referee battle royal. All right. So, what was your favorite part of this week's show?
It's just it has to be the continuation of the Tommy Rich and Jeff Jarrett feud. I mean, they're latching on hard, and I feel like Tommy is going above and beyond to try to make this heated, where it has feeling behind it. You know, these motherfuckers don't like each other for real. You know, I did your work, motherfucker, so you could go to private school. Like, that's the type of stuff, because you could fact check it back then. No, Tommy did get trained down there with Jarrett and all that, so he's probably telling the truth. Like, it felt like real life heat, that's sorry, motherfucker. Like, this is beyond wrestling. And with the aggressiveness of the attacks, and it's like, you're not going to keep these two apart. Like, I like that aspect of it. It almost, I know this is a weird comparison, but it gives me like those Kevin Sullivan Benoit vibes, where you have to tear these people apart from each other. And anytime one of them is in the building, he's aggressively looking for the other.
Because nobody's going to believe that Tommy came back to Memphis just because he wants that ugly belt. So you got to add a layer of something else there. So I'm glad they did.
You should ask Tommy if he ever noticed how ugly that belt was. Because, man, we have all we shit on that belt like crazy. My favorite part, though, is the same thing as Josh. Rich, not only he brings a believability to a feud that other people can't do. It's just something about Rich, because he's had a history. Memphis, he's had the Georgia history. He's somebody that's that is a star. I mean, he really is. He's a star, and his interviews are always good. His work is always there. Tommy's always been one of my favorite wrestlers growing up, and thinking that he was, he won the NWA title and he was a homeboy is what I always thought of it as. But yeah, Jarrett and Rich, two of my favorite mark for both of those guys, and fun to see them going against each other. And I remember seeing a little bit of this, but I don't remember the end of the feud or what happens or none of that. So I'm excited to see what happens in the coming weeks.
Absolutely. So would you guys be buying a ticket to this Monday night's card?
I think I would, just based off of, I would, at this age, I would be so curious about how the Tony Adams and Miss Robin match would end. I'll figure one of those are going to have to die for this to work.
Because, head explode. I heard
head explode. Well, the whole head. And then you got Tommy and Jeff. And then, what Vince was saying about Tatanka in his send-in interview, like the part about he is undefeated in WWF, that means something, that's what he was putting over. Like, I was that kid. Like, I remember specifically thinking Tatanka is a bad motherfucker because he's there, he's undefeated, and the announcers, the television was presenting him in that way to where you believed it was going to be really, really difficult for him to be defeated. And if anybody could do it, it's, King, because he's like setting everybody on fire now. So it might happen.
I would go down. Yeah, I would spend some money. Some of the opening matches is fun for me because I was a fan of, but Tatanka, I guess I was watching, I don't know if I was watching WWE during this time on a regular basis, but yeah, if I was watching all of this at the same time, I would have went. The Rich Jarrett thing is a big draw for me. Huge draw. So yeah, I spend some money and come down to watch the show.
Did you guys notice when they ran down the card that just randomly Principal C.W. Bergstrom's back?
Yeah, I noticed that. What the hell?
That's weird. And I don't know that it goes anywhere, but yeah, he's suddenly back for a week. So that's odd. So before we get to the Monday night card, I found a sample in the Observer of just like a spot show card, and I thought, well, this might be interesting just to kind of hear what people were seeing on the spot show. So in Bowling Green, Kentucky, 321 people came out to see Leon Downs pin the Hawk. Miss Texas beat Miss Candy. Mike Anthony beat Tony Falk. The USWA Tag Team title, the Moondogs beat the Dog Catchers. And in the main event, Jeff Jarrett pinned the Giant Gonzalez.
Oh, my God.
Wow.
Big win for Jeff there. That's fabulous.
Maybe that's what ran him out. As soon as that pin at number 3 happened, he went right to the payphone. He's like, I'm done.
He's like, tells Bill Alfonso, get the car. All right, Daddy, let's get out of here. So that night, after the studio show on the 11th, we head to Nashville to see what version of last week's card we get, because they don't have the Giant Gonzalez by this week. So the card that last week drew 1,200 people in Memphis draws 350 at the Nashville Fairgrounds on September the 11th. Saw the opening match, saw Jeff Gaylord beat Wolfie D. Miss Texas beat Moondog Fifi, who was not around on TV in quite some time. JC Ice beat the American Eagle, which they specified was Ken Wayne. The American Eagle and Miss Texas then defeated, the American Eagle, Miss Texas, and Jeff Gaylord defeated PG-13 and Moondog Fifi. Mike Anthony pinned Tony Falk. And then in the tag title match where Richard Lee's hair was against the titles, the Moondogs won the titles from the Dog Catchers in Nashville. And then we did the same finish for Jeff Jarrett going to a no contest with Tommy Rich. 1,200 in Memphis, 350 in Nashville. So we're having some pretty tough times here on the loop outside of Memphis. So that brings us to September the 13th, Monday night, Mid-South Coliseum. 1,000 people have shown up. That's drastically down, from recent times. But then again, it's not entirely shocking because, yes, Tatanka was a WWF superstar. He was undefeated, but he wasn't setting the world on fire at this point as far as somebody that I just have to go see. So opening match, Jeff Gaylord beats Wolfie D. Colin Scotts, who hasn't been able to beat Tony Falk to save his life, does manage to beat Principal C.W. Bergstrom. Newcomer, the Spellbinder, beat JC Ice. Miss Robin beat Tony Adams. Brian Christopher beat Mike Anthony. The Dog Catchers defeated Spike and Cujo the Moondogs to regain the USWA Tag Team titles and save the ponytail of Mr. Paul Neighbors. In the 7th match, Tommy Wildfire Rich pinned Jeff Jarrett to become the new USWA heavyweight champion. And then in the main event, in 15 minutes and 32 seconds, Native American undefeated Tatanka pinned Jerry the King Lawler to win the USWA Unified World Heavyweight Championship.
That shocks me. I didn't know that. So
I only knew it was coming because I distinctly remember the promo we're going to see next week. And it's one of my favorites, what comes out of this.
Good deal.
Makes for a very fun screenshot coming up next week. So make sure you join us and don't miss out on that, folks, because it's going to be the most memorable Mr. McMahon promo we've seen yet. And who knows what else we're going to see.
Oh, we got a glimpse of the Black Pussy.
Well, I don't know if we're going to see that again, but
a glimpse of it. What gets me is y'all read about what was being said in the Observer. What I want to know is, and I would love to ask Lawler about this, were they really building, and it looks like Vince against Lawler, but why did we never get that match? I'd like to know that.
I'd like to know if that ever was really on the table. If it's something.
It feels like it, though. Don't it feel like it? Not only
it feels like it, but also there's two different schools of thought on that. Yes, that could be what we're building with, but also I've said for years that during one of the best eras of Memphis wrestling, they fell into this deal where Jimmy Hart was the lead heel of Memphis.
Right.
And you had this established heat with him and Jerry Lawler, and that was your constant feud, but you didn't get bored with that feud because Jimmy Hart could cycle in different people to wrestle
and
Jerry Lawler.
Sometimes the same person in 3 different masks to go against Jerry Lawler.
But it kept it fresh.
Drew money.
It wasn't Lawler and Dundee for 16 weeks. It was Lawler versus Jimmy Hart, but it was versus, Dream Machine versus, this one and that one and that. So even if you never intended for Vince McMahon to step between the ropes, you were able to have this feud essentially between Jerry Lawler and Vince McMahon, and you cycled out WWF wrestlers to come in, and that's what made them heels. They didn't have to cut, Tatanka didn't have to cut a heel promo. He didn't have to do anything different than he ever does. It was the heat between Vince McMahon and Jerry Lawler and the fact that that wrestler represented Vince McMahon that made them the de facto heel that was going to make everybody in Memphis boo him and want to see him lose. So it's a good system either way. I don't know if they just intended to have Vince wrestle, and then when Vince saw that the crowd wasn't getting over more than 2,000 or 3,000, he's like, I don't think so, pal. Or that was never the thing. It was just a matter of, hey, we're sending people down to Memphis to help Lawler out. And at some point, who knows? I don't even think at this point Vince could really foresee that he was ever going to play a heel in the WWF. I just think this is Vince's having fun. Hey, I always wanted to be a heel. Wonder what it'd be like. I was a big fan of Dr. Jerry Graham. I could go on this rinky-dink Memphis TV and be a big asshole as I want to, and nobody in the WWF will know the difference. I don't know that there ever really was an intention to have that. I mean, I'd love to ask Lawler that, but I don't know that, Lawler even really knows what Vince's real intentions were. So I guess it's really who's to say. And I don't think we'll ever be able to get Vince McMahon on a podcast. So
no, probably
it's going to be speculation. So there you have it, guys. Another week of USWA Championship Wrestling. Before we get out of here, let's talk about some things. Brian, STSpod.club, what you got going on over there?
STSpod.club, Shiznit Minute, every day on all my feeds. We do Memphis Wrestling Rolling Into Memphis review every week. We're up to episode 209 of Rolling Into Memphis. So they've been going for they just celebrated their 4th anniversary. 4 years, pretty awesome. They haven't missed a show, had a new show every week. We finished up with episode 922 at the beginning of this week. It was the Record Store, and Lance debuted his other new show, 10 for the Road, this past week. That's 2 shows that we do that has nothing to do with wrestling. Just follow us on stspod.club, and you go there. Link of all links in the right-hand corner, and you can find everything stspod.club that you can find right there at Link of all links.
There you go. And always P3 Radio. And I know you guys had to release it. Usually y'all been recording these after we get done here, but I'm guessing you guys had to record it early because Richard was going out of town. So BT might or might not be able to recap it. I don't know.
Oh, dude, I specifically remember the hot points because
all right, let's talk about it.
I'm still thinking about it. So we had a rather in-depth conversation about a particular Bible verse. I'm not going to say which one it is, but Richard had no clue that it was an actual thing, and I felt that it was one that if they had discussed it at his snake handling church when he was growing up, that his grandmother would have used it, just wore it out of why you got to, respect certain things and blah, blah, blah. And then we talk about my recent research that I have done, because occasionally I go on Cameo just to see if we could end the show, because we always said since the very beginning that if we get Moby, the musical artist Moby, on the show to be essentially a spot or a co-host for that day, that there's nothing bigger than that, and we'll end that motherfucker right then. And about once or twice a year I go and check to see if we could do that. No luck. Moby's not on Cameo, but the next best thing, I think, and he's whoring himself out still, Randy Travis. We have talked so much about Randy Travis over the past 2.5 years on our show. And everything that we speculated about back then of them pretty much pimping Randy Travis out at this point, because he has this debilitating condition. For $200, you can get 2.5 minutes worth of Randy Travis and his wife's best to feature on your own podcast. So yeah, Randy Travis is for sale. Randy's dignity, Randy's livelihood, Randy's legacy, it's all for sale.
There's a lot of Randys like that, I suppose.
Oh, wow. Wow. You see, I had the 3 out of 5 hoots this week. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow.
It just and just real quick, I want everybody to know that there's been 8 episodes of P3 Radio this year, and Richard's been sick for 7 of them. And remember, you forget to tell everybody it's a podcast that talks about videos, but never gives the links. Richard always has something wrong, but he never corrects it. And Josh, I want to tell you, you're 98% right on everything, but Richard always has to Google check you. So it's just, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Y'all also was planning a comedy show. What they do, Gene, is they talk about what's going on, and then they do a song, a commercial break. Then they come back and they do tabs. Well, he's doing a comedy show.
Kayfabe the date on that because it's not set.
But I just want to know it's for people under 10, and they can get in for free. And Richard also described dildos he found in his mom's drawer. Richard hates fart jokes, especially by his uncles. And he explained a lot of stuff. And Gene, I know you're going to hate when I say this, but Richard is a comedy expert now. He was explaining how things work to Josh. So Josh just had to sit back under the learning tree and learn about comedy. They spent way too much time on the local weatherman. That Bible story I was going to spoil, but I will not spoil.
You can't spoil that one.
I want to tell you, Josh, I've never heard that story, but Gene, you gotta go out of your way to see that. And for the Randy Travis stuff, which I shit on when they first did it, and Richard talked about me for 3 episodes and pretty much said I could jump off a bridge if I wanted to. I fast forward, so with the 14 minutes and 5 seconds left, y'all started talking about the legend Randy Travis, and I fast forwarded it. But I do want to put over something. And Gene, you know how important this is. I always talk about put out 2 episodes. You got to put out an episode. You got to put out stuff. They are closing in on 400. This was episode 395 this week.
Wow.
And I don't think, Josh, you can correct me, but I don't think y'all have missed a week, have you?
I mean, in like just the putting out content, once a week. Like the way we've scheduled stuff,
it might be. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but y'all have an episode at least in a 7-day period or an 8-day period. Y'all haven't missed a week, have you?
No. Like there was one occasion I think where Richard had to do it with this fucking guy that was on a reality show or something that he was doing a local boxing charity thing. He did a show kind of like featuring him or whatever, and I wasn't there. But we've always put something out.
Yeah, and there's been weeks where Richard pushes the button at the wrong time, and you get 2 episodes in 1 week. We blame all the technical stuff on Richard because Josh he's like Lance. He doesn't know anything that's going on. So
he's figured out some kind of way to like post shows that we record. Say we record a show on the 21st. He gets it posted on the 19th. I think he's got a time machine. I don't know how.
I saw that. I was like, "What the fuck is this about?" So yeah. But 400's a big deal, y'all. I just commend y'all for that. That's awesome.
This is the 41st episode of the Retro Wrestling Podcast, and this is the most consecutive weeks I've ever put out a podcast without missing a single week.
Wow.
So, you're talking like 400 and these crazy numbers that you've gotten doing. It's something to strive for. So congratulations. And I'm definitely going to check out that podcast because I need Richard to give me some tips on comedy advice.
Learning tree.
I don't know shit about it. So I will definitely get into that learning tree for sure. Folks, make sure if you want, speaking of comedy, this is Richard's the one that discovered this. You can dial 256 egg iron, which is
egg iron.
That's the phone number where you can leave messages where people like Richard Lee and Slammer and or Jammer of Brute Force and this mystery person who keeps calling us. That's where they're leaving the message. So you can call it or you can text it, either one. 256 egg iron. Remember to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It helps us out a lot. We appreciate it. Helps get the word out there. Always remember to check out WrestleCopia.com. We are proud to be part of the WrestleCopia Podcast Network, and there's a ton of great content over there. And speaking of guys who put shows out every week and doesn't miss a week. Ray Russell's definitely one of them. So please go check those out. Also check out DougGilbertPodcast.com for dangerous conversations with Dangerous Doug Gilbert and Tommy Wildfire Rich. You can find all things related to them there. Everything for the podcast. You can find their personal Facebooks, Twitters, stores for T-shirts, all that jazz is right there. And of course, for this show, everything related to it, USWA Podcast.com. I haven't been getting any complaints. The listeners have been liking the show. We got 10,000 followers now on Facebook, which I'm pretty damn psyched about. Thank you to everybody who's following the Facebook
I
page.
saw y'all's number on the watch along too. Awesome. That's crazy that you have so many people hitting that. I've had a couple of videos like that, but you got a bunch of people doing that. I also want to put over, you said WrestleCopia. It's the only other network that I record for, which is shows for you. But they have a show in there. If you're a USWA fan or a Memphis wrestling fan, they're talking about 1977 with my college roommate, Steve, not roommate. I keep saying that. He's my college friend, Steve Crawford, with Ray Russell. The 1977 is really a big year in Memphis history. So that's a great, then the Doug Gilbert, I'm going to put that over. I know it's your podcast, but I really enjoy it. That's the two I really listen to over there. I also want you two guys to help me because at the very end of this show, there's something that happens in the crowd. And if there's any way that we can bring back, whoop, there it is. Come on. Whoop, there it is. Whoop. If we can bring that back, us three guys, I need it to happen. I need it to happen so bad.
I need to find that clip of Corey when he was saying that, because Jeff won the title that time, and the entire Mid-South Coliseum, and Corey like, hey, whoop, there it is.
You have to get that sound drop.
Definitely need that, and we'll see Richard back here next week.
He is old. He's retarded. He's decrepit.
Whoa. Paul Nabel, settle down, pal. That wasn't uncalled for. But yeah, we look forward to having Richard back here next week. Thank you, BT, for always being there for the hot tag.
Yes, sir.
Good.
Here. Fun times.
Very soon. So that link I sent you this morning, that's the link we use every week now. It's always the link for the show. So any Sunday free, you want to jump in here and comment on something or plug your stuff, whatever, you're always welcome. We pretty much record every Sunday morning at the same time. We deviate from that very, very rarely. And I'm glad you mentioned it, but thank you to everybody who joined us for the live stream Friday night watching Heroes Wrestling. That was a lot of fun. A lot of great there. So thank you for that. Thank you for reminding me, BT, because it had totally slipped my mind. So
I'm a numbers guy. I count everything. I count all my Facebook views. I count all my everything. It's counted at the end of every month, so I can tell where I'm at or if we're sucking on something, which I am occasionally. But just for the record, I'm just impressed at what the live feed that y'all get. How many y'all get? There wasn't a lot of comments this time, but the number there for people actually at least watching some of it. And I couldn't watch that. I'm glad I wasn't even invited to that. I can't watch that pay-per-view. Oh, I just can't do it.
I mean, I can't watch it for sheer enjoyment, but to sit there and make fun of it, it was fun. I knew that these guys could bring it, and we had a real good time with it. So thank you for everybody that watched, because we got really strong numbers on our last watch along as well, where we were watching USWA stuff. So we're gonna figure out something else to watch. We'll do another one here in a few weeks. I'm trying to do those about every other month, something like that. So. And again, if you see something that we're doing interesting, or if you have a suggestion, BT, let us know. You're welcome to join in, or you're welcome to suggest something. I don't know. We're pondering that Australian pay-per-view with Dennis Rodman, but I don't know. It's shitty, but in a different way. I don't know. I didn't find it to be as fun. I just found it to be more boring than so bad it's good type thing. But we'll see. But anyway, thank you all for joining us. Make sure you check out stspod.club. Make sure you check out P3 Radio, and continue to tell your friends about the Retro Wrestling Review USWA podcast. And we'll see you back here again next week for more.